Freedom of speech is absolutely necessary, but freedom of speech needs to be countered with the facts. Hi, this is Bishop Robert Stearns. Thank you for tuning in to this week's edition of the Israel Frontline Update, where we bring you every week news perspective from stories in Israel, the greater Middle East, and the impact that those stories are having around our world. I've had the very unique privilege over the past 32 years of traveling in a constant way to Israel and the nations surrounding Israel. I'm not a politician, I'm not a governmental official, I'm not a journalist, but I bring you firsthand perspective and commentary on what's happening in Israel and the greater Middle East. And I let you make up your own mind. I let you form your own opinions based on the facts that you assimilate and the knowledge that you bring in. So thank you for giving me this time and for dropping by. So starting this week off, we're not starting in Israel, we're starting in Massachusetts at Harvard. The Department of Homeland Security is threatening to keep Harvard from accepting international students. This is because of the ongoing refusal of Harvard and other Ivy League schools. This is due to the fact that Harvard and these other Ivy League schools allegedly refusing to keep in check this growing anti-Semitism that is on university campuses. And so the current administration is taking this commitment to fight anti-Semitism within higher education in a very, very strong way. And so we're seeing this happening across the board with the refusal to give federal funding to programs, or even to cancel student visas and deport students, or refuse to allow colleges to grant those visas in the future. What do you think about that? Do you think it's a good idea? Drop down in the comments and let me know. Speaking of higher education, a Chicago man has now been officially charged with a hate crime for attacking two Jewish DePaul students. One of them, a friend of mine. Max Lawn is a friend of mine. He told me firsthand the story of what he went through on the campus of DePaul University. Now, to be fair, DePaul issued a statement that the person who did the attack, apparently, or alleged attack, you got to use those legal terms, apparently was not a student. And this is what we're seeing on these university campuses. We're seeing troublemakers bust in. Somebody needs to track the money and figure out who is organizing this, who is paying for these buses. But DePaul is saying that this attacker was not a student at DePaul. DePaul issued this statement: acts of hate and violence have no place at DePaul. We condemn anti-Semitism in all its forms and stand in solidarity with those affected by this reprehensible act. It's a good statement from DePaul, but the fact of the matter is, campuses have a responsibility to make their students secure and to keep their campuses safe. And it seems that allegedly DePaul failed in that responsibility to these two Jewish students, even though the attacker at the end of the day was not another student, but someone bussed in from off campus. So we'll be following that developing story. April 17th, the U.S. is continuing to step up attacks on the Houthi rebels in Yemen. Again, this is one of 3 or 4 Iran-backed militia groups. We have Hezbollah in Lebanon, we've got Hamas in Gaza, and the Houthis, and there are others around the world that are being funded and instigated by Iran. And so America is continuing these attacks on the Houthis, who have been launching long-range missiles against Israel in an ongoing way and attacking U.S. and British ships on the high seas. So keep an eye on the Houthis and what is happening there. Now, we go to Coachella, a very popular music festival, where a Irish group called Kneecap, this is the name of the group, They projected horrible anti-Israel signs, anti-Israel statements in the midst of this very well-attended and influential music festival. They began shouting out all kinds of slogans. You know, folks, this is supposed to be a festival. People are supposed to be there enjoying themselves, celebrating freedom, having a good time. And unfortunately, Coachella became the latest site for this anti-Israel hatred that is going on around the world. Where does that lead? Where does that kind of hatred lead? Well, I think it's not too far of a stretch to draw a line between Coachella and the story that happened a few days later in Yonkers, New York, where a man went into a barbershop. Ahmed al-Jabali went into a barbershop and asked for a haircut, and then allegedly grabbed the barber's scissors and stabbed the barber, who was Jewish, Slava Shushkakov, a Jewish barber, and began swearing at him and stabbed this barber. Repeatedly attempted to stab Shushkakov with the scissors and ended up slashing him in the arm and hand, all while continuing to yell out anti-Semitic slurs. If we allow anti-Jewish, anti-Israel hatred to go unchecked in higher university campuses, in the public square, then that hate is going to manifest in a real way. Well, you say, well, what about freedom of speech? Freedom of speech is absolutely necessary, but freedom of speech needs to be countered with the facts. So you've got to also hold people accountable to the facts and hold them accountable to freedom of speech for all sides of an argument. Freedom of speech is exactly what should be being allowed in places like Coachella or DePaul or Harvard. But then you have to allow a deep dive conversation into the situations surrounding Israel and the Middle East. It's easy to scream F Israel. It's easy to scream out from the river to the sea. It's a far more intellectual exercise to say, let's sit down and let's actually examine the truth of this situation. Folks may still not agree at the end of the day. They may still argue. But I'll tell you what, I believe that both sides, all sides, would do far better by understanding the complexities of this situation. Let me give you, as our next story, an example of that complexity. April the 23rd, surprisingly, Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority, called Hamas the sons of dogs. He turned on Hamas, demanded that they release the hostages immediately. Abbas said, hundreds are being killed every day, release the hostages, and called Hamas sons of dogs. Now, here you have a Palestinian, one of the most famous Palestinian, probably the most famous Palestinian leader, attacking Hamas, while at the same time, those who are claiming to care about Palestinians are supporting Hamas on American college campuses. Folks, this should give you pause. When Palestinians themselves are turning against Hamas, you should continue to support them. Maybe you don't have all the facts, and maybe you need to get more educated on the situation. So as always, an incredible amount of information to absorb and to understand. What I want to ask you to do is hit the subscribe button, the like button, the share button. Get the word out that there is a growing movement of Christians around the world who are standing as watchmen on the wall, standing as those whose hearts are knit to God's purposes for Jerusalem and God's purposes for humanity, which is to live in peace, to live in shalom. And the pathway to shalom is through the highway of truth, the highway of truth, the highway of facts. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. Everyone's not entitled to their own facts. Let's start having discussions around facts, and then we will find the highway to peace. I'll see you next week on the Israel Frontline Update.